Hey, one other story. Alex Lodis for Florida State out of Bartram Trail just won the Dick Hauser National Player of the Year award. And it's a good time to have Nick Morrow in because we root for the local guys. Awesome for Alex Lodis to win that award, a very prestigious award. He's up for the Golden Spikes Award as well. Had an unbelievable year. He's going to get drafted most likely in the first round come July. But Nick, how do you look at something like that? You guys found Alex Lodis, and so are you prideful of that? Some of these guys that kind of move on and still do well. Is that just do you cheerlead some of that now, or is it like, dang, we could have had him for a couple more years?
Think about this. So 2 years ago, we had the best shooting guard in the entire country on our campus and the best player in the country and for baseball on our campus. It's pretty wild. And Chaz Lanier getting the best shooting guard in the country, playing for Tennessee this year, and then what Alex has done at Florida State. So we're proud of that, right? Because we found them, we recruited them, we developed them, and then they've gone on to do big things. There's no point in getting upset about it at this point because that's the nature of the new college athletics world. And so we take pride in being able to develop them and go reach their athletic dreams. Their athletic dreams might not be stay at UNF, become an all-conference player, and win a championship. Their athletic dreams may be, hey, let me contribute to UNF and then go and go to that next level and earn a nice check and then position myself for a pro career.
Yeah. I have this overarching question, though, that I'm going to get to it right now because there's a couple of things. We have Nick's kind enough to join us today, coming off that huge ruling with the NCAA. It was about a week ago today, actually. It was like late on a Friday night news drop type of thing. And we're all still trying to figure out. I think even Nick will admit they're still even trying to figure everything out. Yeah. So we'll get to that. But also want to talk about the Ospreys. But before I get, well, let me do this twofold. I'll talk about the Ospreys right now because Smilla Colby just made it to the championship at the track and field nationals. She's been very decorated for you guys. You go back a couple of years, I forget the name, and you'll remember tennis. She was one of the best tennis players you guys had on campus as well.
Kit Gullihar, yep.
Yeah, she was fantastic. You look at Allison Benning and what she's been able to do this last couple of years in softball. I mean, it's pretty amazing. We talk about Lodis or a guy like Lanier. You find, you develop, they move on. But you've also been able to keep, right? Especially the really good, great female athlete. You guys had some of the best athletes that have ever played at the University of North Florida come by in the last few years.
Yeah, that's a great point. And we've collected a couple of our own transfers, and so UNF has had 3 female All-Americans this year. The previous 14 years of being full member of Division I, we've had 2 total. We've had 3 this year. And so Zara Siassi, who's was a 5-year player for UNF, so she was here from day one, kept playing, and she actually just signed a pro contract with Sporting Jax, so will continue playing in Hodges Stadium moving forward, which is pretty cool. Allison Benning transferred to us from Oregon, and then Smilla Colby, she transferred to us from Southern Miss. All 3 became All-Americans this year and have done tremendous things. Smilla was one of 24 800-meter runners who qualified for the finals out in Oregon. And so she ran last night, and then she qualified for the finals tomorrow night. I think about 10:16 will be her race time tomorrow night on ESPN, and she's one of 9. And so she will be most likely a first-team All-American. So she'll be a first-team All-American in indoor track and outdoor track, which is pretty rare regardless of where you go to school and who you are. To be able to do that in both indoor and outdoor is tremendous. And then she'll turn around.
That's unbelievable. Go ahead.
It is. And then she'll come back and she'll be here just briefly, and then she's going to go to Germany and run in the German championships. And she's going to be a name to watch because she could be in the mix to make the German Olympic team.
Wow. Marcel, I'm going to let you talk here in a minute, but let me just follow up. Why, Nick, have you buried down on the why of that? Like, why have you been able to do that? You just said 3 All-Americans. Like, I got to believe there's a lot of things, right? Good coaching, good recruiting. But again, to be able to keep is almost like the craziest thing because it's so hard to do this day and age.
Yeah, well, we have a pretty amazing athletic director that helps us retain what we really focus on is building a really solid, holistic support system around our student athletes. And so we want to make sure that they love their time here. And I would put our retention rate, let's take men's basketball out of it. I would put our retention rate across all of our sports up against pretty much anyone in the country. We retain at a really high level. We have very few that leave the program to go in the portal and try and figure out what's next. And so we're proud of that fact. And it's a lot of because we have such a good quality of life in Jacksonville. We have a great academic institution. Our location, not just within the country being in Jacksonville, but our location in terms of where we're situated in Jacksonville is tremendous. 7 miles from the beach, across from the town center, really close to the Action Sports Jax studio, all those great things that we've got going for us. And then we've invested in what we build around them, from academics to sports performance to athletic training to mental performance, mental health, all those things to help them be at their best. We're not the richest athletic department in the country, so we're not writing a bunch of full rides with NIL money stacked on top of it. But we can make sure they have a great experience and that we set them up for the next 40 years of their life. And that's really what college athletics was founded on. And we're still embracing that. And so we make sure they have a great experience and then they can flourish and become who they are right now.
Go ahead, Marcel.
Yeah, and I was gonna say you sort of alluded to a little bit, Nick, but like as you said, like the retention rate. Obviously the sports that are kind of at the forefront, those are the kind of the faces of the university. Of course, you see kind of the incoming and the outgoing, the revolving door there, and like you said, a lot of people look at it as kind of like they just come here and they go. But does the fact that you have these success stories of the athletes that are they incoming here, and even the ones that are there from day one, is that kind of what I guess, for lack of a better term, I guess, helps you sleep better at night whenever you do have a guy like a Chaz Lanier who may go, or someone, or like a Lodis who goes?
Yeah. No, we understand where college athletics is headed, where we're at right now. And if we can develop and help them reach their goals and their dreams, let's look at men's basketball this year. Of course, we got gutted again. Mm-hmm. Third year in a row, we've lost 7 to 8 guys. But we've had 2 guys exhaust eligibility out of our top 6 that played a lot. Mm-hmm. 4 go into the portal. Those 4 cumulative made over $2 million in NIL deals in this offseason. 3 of them are going to the Big Ten. And so that's pretty rare, because there was an article that came out. It was about a couple months ago that really surveyed the transfer portal scene and how many went up in a level, how many down, how many stayed at the same. And we exceeded the percentage of transfers that move up. Most of them move laterally or they move down. But we've actually had quite a high percentage move up. And so that's actually, we're above the norm from that. So I think people take notice that we're recruiting a high level, high character individual. We don't have behavioral issues. We have good academic standings, and we've been able to develop our players. And so you see it all the time now at Power 4. They are not recruiting high school at a high level.
Right.
Those especially the basketball footballs of the world, they're going to go and recruit the mid-major first, because that's proven college film and tape. They're only going to go after high school if it's like a no-brainer 4 or 5 star.
Sure.
So when we look at that, we know we're going to get gutted each year. But also, that might be an opportunity for our coaches now. Now do we go after a higher level high school athlete that maybe we wouldn't have gotten before? Mm-hmm. And now do we take, and it's, of course, more of a risk. Anytime you bring in a high schooler over a proven college player, it's going to be more of a risk. But we've got to take risk at North Florida, while the Power 4 are going to still come in and just take our best players.
Sure.
And that's okay. And now we are trying to situate ourselves so we can get more into the revenue sharing NIL game, so that rather than lose 4 guys to the portal, maybe lose 2 guys. Can we retain 2? Because at the end of the day, the most successful programs across the country are old. They're old and experienced. So if we can keep a core group together, at least, that gives us the best chance to win the ASUN conference, which ultimately we're going to be a 1-bid league. That's really where our focus has got to be. How do we be the best in our conference?
Real quick follow-up to that. You said, you talked about the ever-changing landscape, obviously. How does that kind of, what's the difference in terms of how you guys pivot, like as things are changing? Because like you said, with the Power 4s, it's pretty much easy. They just kind of throw a bag at you. But for the mid-majors such as UNF, as everything's sort of pivoting, it's sort of a little bit of a different approach for you guys, obviously, because it's like, I mean, we're not out here trying to compete with like a, for basketball, like a Duke or UNC or Blue Bloods, right? What's the focus, and how do you guys pivot in terms of kind of navigating that changing landscape?
Yeah. So Coach Driscoll and I, before he left, really talked about how we were going to enter this off season of recruiting, because we needed to get old. We had some talented freshmen coming in, had a couple guys that were kind of redshirted, got low minutes that were staying. We didn't have very much experience. As a matter of fact, Mason Lee had been here longer than anybody, the local Providence product, and redshirted one year and played, some minutes the second year, and he was the most experienced person we had. So we were looking at those grad transfers. We really, again, focus on the experience that we have. Now we can really focus on, hey, look what we've done. We've developed, these 5 guys who all have gone on to make, $500,000 to $1 million each, and that's a selling point too. And so we got to focus on that development. Now, we got to get in the NIL and revenue sharing game at a little higher level, because half the ASUN conference right now is spending somewhere between $300,000 to $500,000 on a roster. Half our conference. We're not. And so we still got to get in that game, or it's going to be hard for us to be competitive, or at least have the expectation of our coaches to be competitive. We're not in it in some form or fashion.
Right.
If we were in it in some form or fashion this year at that level, we would have retained, a Jalen and a Liam, and we would have retained a couple of our guys, which would have made us that much better. And so it's ever evolving, and we've got to keep being strategic on how we approach building our programs.
Nick, can you find that money?
I've got ideas on how to do it without necessarily going after donors. Donor fatigue is a real thing. We've got infrastructure issues that we need to address, but there is a plan that I've presented to our university leadership on how we could get at least $500,000 going. And it's basically, using internal resources that we've got and repackaging it. But you've got to make up for some lost revenue, like game guarantees. Can we use a portion, if not all of that, to give back to the programs to go out there and recruit? And so got a game plan there, and there is a path to get there. It'll probably be a multi-year deal before we're doing $500,000, but at least, again, we're going to have a mechanism in place now moving forward on how to do it. So let's come across a donor that says, I don't care about anything you got going on infrastructure. I want to pay NIL. Okay, we're going to have that system in place starting in July. So now at least we have a mechanism to do it when we didn't have it before. Because under the old NCAA rules before, which just came into effect last week, is that you had to run it out of a third party. Those collectives are all third-party businesses. Those are not run by the university. And so you had to find somebody that wanted to come in. They wanted to start a business. They wanted to enter into agreements with athletes. They wanted to collect payments, donations from donors. Then they wanted to turn around and pay athletes. And then they had to do taxes and other forms involved in running a business. I have a lot of people excited about running a business that just pays athletes. Well, now I don't have to worry about that, because under this new model, now you can run it in-house. You take all that in-house, and you're reading stories all over the place where all these collectives that existed are now getting folded in-house. The only people that will continue to run collectives are the richest, who are going to meet the new revenue sharing cap, but want to keep spending beyond that. Yeah, your SEC and Big Ten schools, about half of them will probably do that. Texas Tech is clearly doing that. They're projected to spend $55 million on all their rosters across all their sports next year.
That's crazy.
$55 million they're going to spend on athletes. And so when your revenue sharing cap is 20.5, you still got to, that means you're generating another $35 million in donations from folks to make that happen.
It's unbelievable. Let me go through a couple of bullet points from the ruling last week. And because I want to, like, UNF doesn't fit in the same umbrella as everybody else. There's like this Power Four world. There's the Texas Techs of the world that a guy's sold an oil company and has $1 billion now and can do whatever he wants. So you can buy your way into what looks like they're buying themselves some softball players, right? And a really good program at Texas Tech. But UNF can't do that. You just told us that. The $2.8 billion where they're going back 10 years and giving some folks money. Can you give us an example of somebody that might get, like, do you guys have anybody at University of North Florida that would get anything going back 10 years? Dallas Moore, I don't think fits. Like, would he have been a candidate if he fit in the window?
Yeah, he just squeezes in. So
assuming he squeezes in. Okay.
Yeah, because he graduated in 2017.
Okay.
Yeah, 2017. And so as long as he filed, that's the thing. All these student athletes had to file, and that was due back in like January. And so we went around and promoted them filing. I don't know how many did. I don't have record of that. But I know that's a couple people in my office that are former student athletes. I encourage them to do it and watch them do it. And so we got a former women's golfer and a former beach volleyball player that played during that era, and they're set to get, I think $700 was the estimate the system spit back. No, I mean $700.
Hey.
I'll take that, right? I mean, and so they got that. But then you look at a basketball player. So our office manager is former beach volleyball player who married Carter Hendrickson. And so Carter Hendrickson went through with exercise, and basketball players are set to get thousands of dollars because there's video game element to it. There's different things tied to basketball that's not tied to the Olympic sports. So out of the $2.8 billion, 75% roughly is going to go to football players. About 15% is going to go to men's basketball, 5% to women's basketball, and then the rest of the sports. So if you file the claim, you're getting something.
Yeah.
And so that's a good thing. Hopefully, most of our people, put in for it and they'll get a little something out of it. Because if we have to pay back, and UNF is going to lose about $285,000 a year out of our NCAA distribution for this payback. And so if we're going to pay into this, I at least want some of our athletes to get it right.
Absolutely. Yeah. Good point. All right. So the $20.5 million that everybody keeps hearing, this revenue share thing, let's be crystal clear about it. I got to tell everybody here and what people you're not doing that. You don't have UNF is not doing that. Right.
So our total operating budget, total expenses we report each year for the past 2 years have been about $17 million. And so us spending $20.5 million revenue sharing, I like to think I'm a decent business guy, an accounting major from Florida. And so I don't think that adds up.
Math.
That's math doesn't add up. Now, that's the revenue sharing cap. We can get involved in revenue share. So if our revenue share ends up being $500,000, that could be it. There's other rules that go towards that revenue sharing cap too. So under the new NCAA guidelines, there's roster limits, not scholarship limits. And so if anything you spend on new scholarships above the existing rules counts towards that cap, up to $2.5 million. So let's take baseball. Baseball is 11.7 that you could spend on a roster up to 40. Well, now the roster limit's 34. No more than that could be on your roster as of December 1st. And so that gap between 11.7 and 34, every scholarship dollar spent there counts towards a revenue sharing cap. So it's not just direct NIL spent by the university. There's other things that count towards that cap. And so we'll get involved in some of that. So at the end of the day, our revenue sharing cap, when we really roll out our plan and be able to execute over the next couple of years, we might be saying we're spending $3 million towards the revenue sharing cap. Well, it's a combination of new scholarships, Alston Award, and some direct NIL.
Okay. Marcel, you can jump in here a little bit as a Georgia Bulldog. And I think we kind of did this last week on the show, or maybe it was earlier this week when it came out. And Nick, I'm going to put you in charge of a Power 4 school now for a minute. And you guys can wrestle over this, but you got $20.5 million. Where's the percentage go to football at Georgia, say, or Florida? And where does it go to basketball? And what does that leave for baseball? And what does that leave for softball and Title IX stuff? And where you want to be good? I've heard Florida State really wants to be good in women's soccer over these last few years. They've spent a lot in that area, and they're way better than a lot of teams because of it. So, how do you pick your poison there, Nick? What goes into that, do you think, especially with those two schools I gave an example with, where you've got to be football heavy in the South?
Yeah, so a lot of the Power 4 are modeling the payback portion of it. And so I talked about 75% going to football, 15% to men's basketball, 5% to women, and then the rest. A lot of Power 4 schools are modeling that with their 20.5. Okay. And so that's going to be a popular move. Other people are looking at it more of, okay, who's going to bring us the most exposure?
Right.
What have we been successful in the past? Okay, let's double down on that. And that's why you see Florida State going to give women's soccer some money. Their collective was handing out 6-figure deals to some soccer players, women's soccer this past year. And so they've been very good in women's soccer, and they want to stay very good. Other programs are like, well, we haven't really been successful in this, so we're not going to give them any more. We'll just keep them where they're at right now. Some are like, well, look at how much viewership you get if you make a run in baseball or softball. Okay, let's go a little harder there. And so those that don't have unlimited resources are going to do that. Your Texas of the world, there's a handful of schools that come out and say, basically, we're going to fully fund every sport because we can, because we're rich. I talked about us having a $17 million operating budget. University of Texas has a $336 million operating budget. Technically, we're competing for the same national championship. Right?
Yeah.
So, and that might be the next fight that comes up here. So, but they can afford to do that. They can fully fund every position, do a $35 million football roster. Like, it is wild. It's next level at that Power Four for sure. And so part of this whole NCAA model too is there's going to be a new governance structure that's going to come out. That's going to give a lot more autonomy to the Power Four. They're basically going to be able to make the rules however they see fit because they're going to have like 65% of the voting power. Now, they're still working through nuances of it, but they are going to have more power under this new system. And what they want will go for the most part.
Marcel, jump in on your dogs if you want, or take it anywhere you go before we head to a break.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to pick up kind of like you were talking about as far as like allocating sort of the pie. You talk about, from a purely business standpoint, obviously the athletic director, it's, where are we going to see the most return, whether it be exposure and things of that nature. But, from like the athletic director kind of managing, the personnel, being your coaches, what type of conversations are you expecting to have with them? Because obviously, if I'm, obviously softball, we're talking about Jeff Conrad, he has a very good claim to say, hey, look, we're kind of hot right now versus, some of your other teams that, from a coach's standpoint, sure, they might have, the objective opinion of, hey, I see it. They kind of are, the biz needs, if you will, right now. But, what about us? What's kind of the conversation in that regard of, say, like, for example, like if it's, I don't want to throw anyone specific out there, but a team that's not, on the rise, if you will.
I have my Power 4 hat or my UNF hat on?
Yeah. You have your UNF hat on for right now.
All right, cool. What's nice about not having football is that I think we can invest in all of it. And there's been some noise about already from the SEC and Big Ten because now they're seeing Big East basketball. Big East basketball now doesn't have football they can invest in, and they generate a good chunk of money. So now all of a sudden their rosters could be 8 to 10 million just for basketball. And so they could really invest heavily into that. Now, at UNF, I feel like we could invest in every single sport, and that's our plan, is to everybody gets increases. I've talked a lot with our CFO, a lot with our president about how we could do that, what the approach is. If we don't, we won't be competitive as like we are now. But if we do, we can not only be as competitive we are now, we could be greater. Because I truly think that we could be the best in the ASUN conference and compete for a championship every single year. But we've got to invest in the scholarship piece. So right now, under the current NCAA rules, if we fully funded scholarships, we would hand out about $4.2 million. That's 161.2 scholarships if we fully funded under the current rules. The new rules, our roster limit will be 340, which will cost over $8.5 million. Now, I'm not saying we need to fully fund roster spots.
Sure. But
if we can get to $5 million, we could be extremely competitive in every sport. And we've done really well, too. Just under the model we are now, we're the lowest funded scholarship support in our conference. We're we're 11th out of 12 right now in terms of number of scholarships we hand out. But yet we're finishing top 5 in the All Sports Trophy, winning championships. So that's what excites me. I'm not saying that from a complaining standpoint. I'm saying from if we invest in this, we can dominate the ASUN conference. We can be a national brand, make national attention. Look at what softball just did. They got millions of impressions, a lot of talk about our program. Allison Benning made it to a regional final, one of the last 32 teams left. Softball America just came out. We're number 25 in the final rankings that they put out in the country. That's great exposure, and that's so that's what can happen if you invest into your programs. And so that's really the approach we're taking. Everyone's going to benefit. Some people will benefit more.
Sure.
To your point, who's going to bring us the greatest amount of exposure? Who's going to generate the most revenue? Who's going to bring that national attention? Because our job as a Division I athletic department is to drive enrollment, drive student life experience, drive donor and community engagement. So those 3 things. What sports drive that at a higher level than others? And those are the business decisions we have to make. But no one's going to get cut. Everyone's going to go up.
Now I want you to put your Power 4 hat on and kind of we'll kind of localize this a little bit. You're talking about, obviously football is always going to be king, especially down here in the South. We'll move a little bit west over to the Florida Gators. Obviously their football program is going to be king, but you got a basketball program coming off a national championship, got a lot of momentum, a lot of guys coming back. They might say, hey, we want to keep our guys. We want a bigger piece of the pie. What's that conversation? Because you have other sports that are also pretty good. You have the softball team, baseball, the gymnastics teams. What's that conversation if, like, Todd Golden says, hey, look, I know football's king, but, we want a little bit more of the pie because we want to keep what we're doing.
Right. It'd be interesting to see how big their collective is, because that's going to play a big part in it, because that $20.5 million will only go so far.
Yeah.
And you got to dump a lot of it into football, because if any program brings more exposure or generates interest or revenue, like college football is king for sure. But that market value or that marketing value that the University of Florida got after a Final Four run, pretty darn good, and so then you also have to capitalize on that excitement. People are more willing to donate to Florida basketball right now coming off a Final Four than a 500 season where they missed the tournament. And so you've really got to double down and really build up that fund from that perspective. And then the other sports, if you've been in it long enough or been in it period, you should recognize that you exist for the most part because of success of football and basketball. If they're good and they're generating more, you're going to get more. So yeah, let's root for them at a high level.
The humility.
Yeah, 100%. Because if they have success, you're going to get some extra funds, and you're going to get your support. And a place like the University of Florida, I wouldn't be surprised if most of them end up being fully funded at some point. So that's the other thing about this revenue sharing cap. It starts at 20.5 this year, but they're projecting over the next decade to get all the way to 33 million.
Yep.
Because every year it takes a little jump up. And so then you could kind of scheme too, even if coming out of the gate, hey, we can't fully fund and do everything, but here's our 3 to 5 year plan on how we're going to get you there.
Nick, you're doing. Oh, sorry.
No,
sorry
you're
to interrupt. You want to finish that thought? You're doing a great job, by the way. Awesome stuff. This is not easy stuff to understand, and so we appreciate you sharing with it, and also talking about the UNF programs, and also on the higher levels too, what it means. Let's take a break, because we're going to be way late if we don't. But when we come back, I actually feel like listening to you guys are in a much better situation than maybe I thought with all this. And I don't know if I'm right, but I'll explain why I think that way. And also the impact on high school kids. I think moms and dads and people like that would love your thoughts on that in today's landscape, because we're always promoting that on a lot of our things that we do, and finding kids homes, which is the hardest time to ever play college sports right now in the history. We know that. Not many times you can absolutely say that, and we know that. And then a little bit more on UNF, including the basketball program, which just had a mega change with Coach Driscoll departing and Bobby Kennan in. And we're going to have Coach Kennan on the show probably next week, but I'd love to get your thoughts on that too. So still to come, Brent and Austin Show, Action Sports Jax 24/7 Network. Looks like a pretty good day in Jacksonville on a Friday, heading into the weekend in the middle of summer. Beautiful spot to be. More with Nick Morrow, the athletic director at the University of North Florida, when we come back.
Are you about to graduate high school and haven't decided on what you want to do when you get done? Well, one option is to apply to become a student in the Electrical Training Alliance of Jacksonville. Their program offers structured classroom and online training, along with on-the-job training, so that you can earn while you learn. Still not convinced? The folks at ETA Jax are a tuition-free 4-year apprenticeship program. There is no tuition and no student debt. Just pay for your books and your fees. That's it. Now, speaking of pay, students, they start off making $40,000 per year, including benefits, and they graduate, get this, making over $80,000 per year, including those sought-after benefits. Now, that sounds pretty good to me, and if that sounds good to you, it should check off a lot of boxes. So head on over to etajax.org and apply by May 15th. Again, the website right here, etajax.org. Don't wait, apply today.
People helping people. It's at the core of what Alive Credit Union is all about, and it's been that way for over 70 years. From the start in 1954 to today, the mission remains to inspire financial wellness and give you a financially fit lifestyle. Alive Credit Union and its employees are committed to not only serving their valued members, but also our community here in Northeast Florida. I had a chance to see that commitment firsthand as Alive partnered with our Action Sports Jax 24/7 team to bring you Armada men's and women's soccer broadcasts. Inside the 18, it is a shot, and it's a goal! Chloe Chivers! And that connection to the community continues with Alive Credit Union's support of the Police Athletic League of Jacksonville. Alive Credit Union's commitment to our community also involves serving the financial needs of all first responders through the recent merger partnership with City and Police Federal Credit Union. Join the community and become a member of Alive Credit Union today. Find out the many ways you can be inspired in financial wellness at alivecu.coop.
You trust CGC to make your water great, and now you can trust CGC with your plumbing needs as well. Fast, convenient scheduling, licensed and insured. A quick call away at 904-552-1242.
You never know when you're going to have an issue with a shower, toilet, or maybe it's a sink that sometimes is easy to fix. All right, let's be honest. I'm not fixing anything. I'm totally staging this because when I have a plumbing problem, I call CGC Water Treatment and Plumbing.
Trained professionals, transparent pricing, customer satisfaction. Small problem or even a bigger issue. Save 10% off any water heater plus no trip charge. The experts with 25 years of experience at CGC Water Treatment and Plumbing can do it all. Call 904-552-1242 or visit cgcwater.com. For a limited time, CGC is waiving the trip charge on all related plumbing calls. CGC Water Treatment and Plumbing, an authorized independent Connecticut dealer. Florida license number CFC 1432579.
For the game day hustle and every day in between, juggling my show Jax Social to going under the Friday night lights and a social life, it's a daily tournament. But this ride, MVP status. The all-new 2024 Lincoln Nautilus isn't just my car, it's my personal locker room, office on the go, and VIP lounge on wheels. Let's talk tech. My profile remembers everything from customizing my dash display to setting the ambient lighting and my signature scent. And wireless charging, essential for live tweeting scores. Whether I'm packing for a beach day with friends or heading to the gym, there's space for every passion. After dominating all day, this becomes my recovery zone. The massage feature is like having a personal PT on call. Life's a non-stop game, but with this ride, I'm always on my A game. The 2024 Lincoln Nautilus. Drive your passion.
Grab some friends and go to a restaurant or head out for a drink and some conversation. Watch your favorite team play on the big screen. Or how about play some games? You can do all of that in one night at Best Bet. Each location has a different vibe, its own personality, like here at the original Best Bet in Orange Park. When you walk through these doors, everybody knows your name. And here in St. Augustine, it's the newest location. Play some poker. How about the table games? And don't forget about Ace's Sports Bar and Grill. And then there's the Jacksonville location right here on Monument Road. It's the biggest poker room in the state of Florida. Maybe you'll find yourself a seat right here at the final table. Best Bet, where you can have the best of times. And that makes you always go home a winner. Try any of the 3 locations, and you can always visit bestbetjax.com.
Welcome back to the Brent and Austin Show, streaming on the Action Sports Jax 24/7 network.
Hey, it's a Friday on the Brent and Austin Show. We were talking about Alex Lodice, Dick Hauser Trophy Award winner. By the way, Buster Posey, J.D. Drew, the other 2 Florida State Seminoles that have won this. I mean, it's an unbelievable story. Hopefully we'll catch up with Alex in the next couple of weeks before mid-July and the Major League Baseball draft, where we anticipate him going. Probably one of a handful of players that will be drafted from Jacksonville in the top 75 picks, depending on their signability, including Trinity Christian pitcher Aaron Watson, who we've had on the show before. He's gone from Virginia commit to now a Florida commit, but will he end up going in the draft? We will see. Guys like Max Williams out of Florida State as well on that list. So much baseball talent around here. So much that could land and has already landed at a place like the University of North Florida. Nick Morrow, the athletic director for UNF, joins us here on a Friday. We're trying to break down this NCAA ruling and how it equates to UNF and what it all even means. There's so much to this that I think even Nick would admit they're still learning about, too, on some levels, even though they've digested it for a while. Marcel Robinson sitting in, Casey Kurtz doing all the hard work this week. We appreciate him and everybody. While Austin's down in fight camp in South Florida, he'll rejoin the show in the last hour of the show as well. All right, I look at life as a pie chart. Probably too much, or like a bar graph. I'm not really sure. My mind operates that way, Nick, and I'm listening to you talk, and I'm like, all right, if you can get the bar graph of dollars up to where everybody else in the A-Sun is, it gives you a great chance to compete. Let's specifically say in basketball, because it's a one-bid league anyway. So even if people do raid your rosters, they're going to raid other people's rosters as well. So at least you feel like you're on somewhat of an even playing field if you can lift some of the dollars up specifically toward basketball. But you take sports like a softball or a baseball in this instance, because you don't have football, that you can really, and because a lot of the big schools, big programs are going to put probably the least amount of resources into sports like that relative to basketball and football, that maybe you can really compete at the bigger level and really grow those programs because you don't have to worry about football. I know you mentioned the Big East in the sport of basketball. You guys probably aren't going to become Gonzaga in basketball, if we're being real. It's really hard to do that right now. Gonzaga did that 25 years ago, and I'm not sure anybody else is doing it. But can you become Murray State in Coastal Carolina and end up in Omaha someday is a little bit more reasonable, even in this kind of climate. Do you think I have that right? Is that a decent kind of vision for you guys?
Absolutely. I mean, the Murray State story is great. Being a 4 seed, 800 seat stadium, like that is UNF, like what they've got going on. And so, as a matter of fact, our ASUN conference champion was a 3 seed in their regional. Mm-hmm. When we went to softball regional, we were a 3 seed. So honestly, we could be in a better position than what Murray State just did. And they're not the only ones that have done it over the years. Think back to Fresno State, Coastal Carolina, who's now, a national seed. But when they first won, they came up in a similar route. So there is a philosophical discussion on that, because basketball is going to be hard year to year, regardless of how much money you put into it, because we're never going to put into it where we can pay $500,000, million per kid. And so we're always going to lose a handful of guys off the roster, most likely. And so you're basically creating a team year to year. Can you put all the pieces together to go after an ASUN championship that particular year? While other programs, if you're investing a significant amount of money into scholarships and what they have to work with, you probably could sustain success. So Jeff Conrad, I didn't turn around and give him a bunch of money because he won the softball championship, because I don't have it, but we've invested a little bit more into him and his staff and his program, and obviously they're a really hot team right now, and the calls they're getting from kids in the transfer portal are pretty impressive. We're talking about starting Power 4 position players that have reached out saying, hey, you guys, I love the way you play, I love how much fun you had. Like, people took notice. So again, this is one of those opportunities that you got to kind of double down and take advantage of a team that's really hot so that you can sustain this year in and year out. And so there is that philosophical discussion is, do you put a little bit more into some of these other sports because they have a better chance of sustaining it? Now, with that said, you still have to compete in basketball, because that's the one sport that can generate more exposure than any other sport outside of football. Like, when you make that NCAA tournament, that's a whole different level of marketing value. Just look at what we did back in 2015. And you had Sarah Walsh walking through our campus, interviewing Coach Driscoll, floating in the lazy river with Bo Beach, doing an interview. That's millions and millions of dollars of advertising you cannot buy. And only the sport of basketball can do quite that.
Yeah, that's true. Marcel, I'll get to you in just a moment, but I've got this overarching question, Nick. If I'm the president at a lot of different schools, this might be careful because I'll never be the president, just let everybody know that, of any school. And I don't really think I want to. By the way, I blame the Power 4 presidents for a lot of the mess that we're in too. Not UNF. It's doing a great job. But I'm asking this question at a lot of different institutions, and I don't know where the cutoff is. At Florida, Florida State, you're always going to get money and boosters and TV revenue from football and all this stuff. From maybe UNF fits in this, or maybe D2's fit in this, I don't know. But if you're not careful with how much you use the transfer portal and why people are leaving, kids are leaving, are you running the risk at your dollars down the road being impacted? Because who's now loyal to X school to give back? I take Ashland University. They call me every year. If I was a millionaire, I'd be given more money. But sooner or later in your sports world, you're going to produce millionaire athletes that will give back for 40, 50, 60 years to your university. And I just wonder how cognizant people are right now of that while they're chasing championships and using the transfer portal just at this willy-nilly kind of looking way. Now, you said it. You guys have a good retention rate. That's a good thing. You also have used the transfer portal to your advantage, and a team like softball, they've done a great job with the transfer portal. how much are there any conversations about that right now? Like, we need Joe Jr. here to be part of UNF because we might need his dollars someday to give back as an alum. And who's he going to be committed to or loyal to when that guy's raking in $4 million a year?
Yeah, that's definitely an untold story of the transfer portal. Is, do these kids that are transferring every year, they don't have a home. That's a great thing about college athletics. When you step foot on campus, you have stepped into a built-in network that could take care of you literally the rest of your life.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're only there for a year and then you go to another school and then another school, there's no loyalty, there's no built-in network, people aren't going to take care of you down the road. And so that is a sad part of this that I think will have some long-term effects. Other untold story is how many kids go in the portal and never find a home. Like, that story is not told enough. All we hear about the glamour stories of where they get paid and they go to a higher level, and so there's a lot of bad about transfer portals as well. And it is speed dating too. So, and from a coach's perspective, when you bring somebody in, what kind of kid are you bringing in? Because you don't have a lot of time to do your homework like you do high school recruiting, where you get to know the parents and the family and you watch them and watch their mannerisms as they compete and those kind of things to decide, okay, this is the character kid who also has the skill set that we're looking for. You don't have that opportunity, because if you don't move fast in the transfer portal, another coach will, and you potentially lose out on them. So there's a lot more risk involved in the transfer portal as well. And I don't know certain situations within the basketball programs, but there are some that spent millions of dollars in NIL and missed the NCAA tournament. And that might be why. They might have brought in the wrong combination of guys that couldn't get along in the locker room, because that's the other thing. With all this money flying around, there's a locker room dynamic, and say, man, you should be producing more. You're making $2 million. Mm-hmm. You ain't doing anything. You're shooting 30%. That's a dynamic. Mm-hmm. And how do you manage that as a basketball coach? So there's a lot of layers to this whole transfer portal world.
Yeah, sure.
Marcel, I like, just a quick comment here. The one thing I like about this right now is I think accountability is back on the coaches and the administrators and the adults to some degree. If you're going to separate the pie and put X amount in this spot and this spot, you're going to be held accountable by the results and how much you're investing. As an AD for Nick or a president or whoever came up with those decisions. It also, because of the roster limits, is going to be more accountability, though you can get out of it, more accountability on recruiting and who you're bringing in and who you're using with the transfer portal. And right now, I think there's no accountability on a lot of higher ups at the biggest of institutions, because they just erase it with more money, like Texas Tech maybe is doing at the moment. But that's just my comment. I won't have Nick comment on that. Marcel, go ahead.
Well, the roster limit thing is interesting, because you're going to see who the good coaches really are. Because if you only can bring in X number of athletes, mm-hmm. like Power 4, a lot of times they'll just bring in a bunch of 4 and 5 stars and see who filters out into their starting lineup, and we're going to keep them and roll with them. Well, now they got to make decisions. Like, we could go with a smaller sport like men's golf, who only has 9 now in their roster limit, but Florida Gator national championship team from a couple of years ago had 14, 15 guys deep. And they just say, okay, let's see who filters out and creates this championship team. Well, now they got to pick their 9, and then they got to develop them. And so you're going to see who the real good coaches are. Now, the roster limit thing might take a few years to come into play fully, because that was part of the delay in the approval of the settlement, is there were a ton of objections against the roster limit. And so the judge made them go back and create a grandfathering in of roster limits. Because the original settlement was like, nope, you're at your roster limit come July 1, right? When we get going, you have to be at your limit. So a bunch of kids were being cut off rosters, or high school kids that had committed we weren't honoring their commitment anymore. And that was happening across the country, to a point the judges were like, hold up, we need to grandfather this in. And so that was the delay, but now part of this. And so now each school, this is an honor system, which kind of makes me chuckle a little bit, honor system across NCAA athletics, that you have to designate your student athletes that would qualify as being grandfathered in. And so we have to submit a list by, I want to say July 6th, of our designated student athletes. And they don't count towards the roster limit. And so we're still going to be 3 or 4 years before everyone truly is at a roster limit. But when we get to that point, like coaches, you're going to see who the good coaches are and who aren't, because you got to make decisions and you have to develop them.
I just want to say I did not transfer. I went to UNF and I stayed all 4 years. I didn't play anything, but I just want to say I committed to driving across town to going to school. I'm not gonna say every day, but I drove to school every day and did not transfer.
Well, we'll have you speak at the next commencement. Yeah,
Perfect.
yeah.
I'm there.
Your options are limited.
That's right. But my question, like, I don't want to make a hard pivot, but like, and I know Brent wants to get to obviously the big change that we've had in the men's basketball program, but and this might be a question maybe for coaches, but from one of the things that we always talk about, and you just mentioned, is about with UNF, when you're bringing kids in, like you're preaching like this is a home, like we're gonna make you feel at home, it's a family. But with the way all these things are changing, these new rules and legislations, it seems like the incoming kids, like the high school kids, they're not looking for home, they're looking for dollars. So in terms of, like you said, with the new amenities, just being able to kind of take care of them and give them that home feeling, like where's the balance and I guess the challenge in that? Because a lot of times you say, hey, you come in here, we got new facilities, we're building this, we have this new field going in, and I guess the response for them is, well, that's cool. How much are you gonna pay me? Where's the challenge in that response?
Yeah. Most of our sports, we don't get that question right now, which is good. Now, we do get, okay, you're doing cost of attendance or you do an Alston Award, how big of a scholarship? And that's where we've got to invest more in scholarship dollars to be able to recruit, a higher level student athlete from that perspective. It is really hard for high school students to go to that Power 4 level. You have to be pretty special, especially with the roster limit situation right now, and especially with the unlimited transfers. Again, Power 4 is going to keep recruiting at every sport into the mid-major first. And then with limited roster spots, it is harder than ever to be a high school student athlete and find a home at Division I athletics. The opportunities have been cut back in the way just recruiting works. And so, depending on the sport, it's not a bad idea to go, a low to mid-major Division I or even Division II, play a lot, become an all-conference player, because then all of a sudden you're immediately going to be on the radar for Power 4. Mm-hmm. So if that's your ultimate goal, is to be a Power 4 student athlete, that's not a bad approach. Go to a low mid-major, play a lot, Division II, play a lot, get on that all-conference team, get your stats up, and then you are going to be more marketable and more, people are going to pay more attention to you at that point.
Yeah, I think that's a good call too, Nick. I just saw this morning North Carolina just took a shortstop in the portal who went to North Dakota State. And North Carolina's been very good in baseball. Like, they paid this kid; he's a shortstop, and they said, "Hey, we saw him do it at North Dakota State." And in my mind, I'm like, "Who cares if he did it at North Dakota State? Like, it's not going to translate to the ACC, But obviously, they saw some things, and in many respects, this is what I hate. This is what was, and I'll use Lodis as an example. You guys offer Lodis, you find Lodis, and it's like, and good for the kid. This has nothing to do with Lodis made a right move, and no doubt about it. But for you guys, it's like, wait, we found the kid. You guys missed on the kid. Right. You guys missed him, and you don't want to take the time to develop him, and you get him. I guess it's just the nature of life, like it is, but it sucks. Like, that part to me sucks, because there's no reward for the school that gave the kid the chance and found him, unless someday he does give back to the university and remembers that. And hopefully they do. But I guess, is that a cry a little bit from either D2s or D3s or JUCOs, or, well, not JUCOs probably, but a UNFs of the world, where could we see a formula someday where if you come raid us, we get a percentage, or we get some kind of, I don't want to call it a kickback, that sounds illegal, but like some kind of dollar amount for us finding a finder's fee, if you will?
I would love a good old transfer fee. Let's take a European soccer model and get that transfer fee going. That would be great. I don't think that's realistic, but I think what could be realistic, and this is kind of a topic that's been picking up lately, is as part of revenue sharing, you are entering into an agreement with student athletes. They're basically independent contractors for the university, not employees, but independent contractors when you enter into these revenue sharing agreements. So student athletes are going to have a scholarship agreement, and they're going to have a revenue sharing agreement side by side. Revenue sharing agreement, that's what we're trying to figure out. Like, okay, what all can we put in there to protect us so they don't transfer, or they think twice before transferring? Can we put basically a buyout in the contract? So if you leave this school, then you owe us back $50,000 or $100,000 or 50% of whatever we gave you. I think you're going to see that if people can get away with it. And I think they can, because you're entering into a contract and agreement. So if you have a multi-year agreement with a student athlete to pay them X amount for doing X deliverables, and then all of a sudden you put a clause in there, well, if you transfer or you enter the transfer portal, then this is what we get back, or we'll hold payment. Like we talked about structuring revenue sharing agreements to say, okay, you'll get one payment this month, and then the next one we won't give you until the transfer portal closes. And then that encourages retention, or if they decide to go, well, at least we didn't spend money on that individual that we didn't need to. And so you're going to see a lot of that and a lot of discussions related to that now that universities are entering into contracts directly with student athletes.
All right, I got lightning round because we got to get you out of here in 6-7 minutes. You got an appointment to be at 12:30. Appreciate all your insight, and I won't make you late. I promise. So fast. Is this our model for the next 20 years, 30 years, or is this going to continue to evolve? I mean, is this it?
So this settlement's a 10-year agreement, and so we're locked into this for the next 10 years. And this is law now. This is the other thing that's kind of interesting, is that this is law now. A judge ruled on this model and what we're doing. This isn't an NCAA bylaw that somebody would violate anymore. This is a whole new level. And another thing that's not talked about a lot yet is the College Sports Commission has now been created. This is a separate arm from the NCAA that's enforcing all these rules. The NCAA is not enforcing these anymore. They won't come down with the penalties. The College Sports Commission is, and they just hired a former Major League Baseball exec to run this. Yeah. And so that's going to be really interesting to see how that goes. Another thing is third-party NIL deals. So those that are outside the university have to go through this new system powered by Deloitte called NIL Go. And every agreement over $600 has to go through here, whether you opt in or out of this model. And it kicks back whether it's an approved agreement or not. So you're going to see agreements that literally get denied because they don't match market value, the deliverables, and what the kid's getting paid don't all line up. And so Deloitte went and talked to the SEC presidents or ADs a few weeks ago and basically said 70% of the deals that are out there right now will not get approved in the new model. Wow. And so we might have peaked in terms of the amount of money that's out there right now. Because
do you trust those guys? Do you trust that? Do you think the AD? Do you think the college world trusts Deloitte? And by the way, if you're looking for a job, Deloitte probably has some openings right now.
Yeah, there's some skepticism about the system, of course, because it's new and we don't really know how it's going to work. And does that trigger the next lawsuit the first time one of these multi-million-dollar deals get denied? Say, wait, you can't tell me what fair market value is. And so that'll be something to watch. But the power for ADs and president, they want this because this will rein in the amount of money that's flying through the system. This will rein in the pay for play and some of the shadier behavior that's out there. That's what this system's supposed to do. And so that's why I think we have peaked. I think we peaked for several reasons. One, because of the system. Two, I think there's going to be those donors, the earlier point that you made, that aren't going to want to keep dumping money into NIL to go 2 and 10. And then they're like, wait a minute, I gave you $400,000 for a line that can't block anything, and so I'm not going to give you 500 this year to go get those kind of guys. And so I think that's going to slow down. I think the system is going to temper it a little bit. And so that's why, but to answer your question, this is our model for the next 10 years. It will constantly evolve. The governance structure is going to change a little bit. And it's just going to be interesting to see what's next, but this is just getting the carousel moving. We're just getting going.
You might have said this. Is UNF opted in? Have you guys opted in? Or will there be some time before you opt in?
So it was originally June 15th was the deadline. They pushed to June 30th because of the late decision. They're supposed to be sending out a 51-page question and answer document related to the settlement that it's going to provide more clarity on some questions that we have. Odds are we will opt in for this upcoming year because of the whole grandfathering in roster spots, because then we don't have to cut student athletes to get down to the roster limit. So we will likely opt in, but we're waiting for that 51-pager to make sure there's nothing in there that gives us some concern.
And this is a question for like Casey and Marcel and people swooping all over the place that love the University of North Florida. As the athletic director, do you feel like you guys are in a pretty good spot right now or hanging on for dear life? And I guess the follow-up would be, how much time before you're in the spot that you're happy with? Like, is it 5 years or feel good about? Like, what's your vision as the AD when it comes to that?
We're hanging on for dear life right now. put together a plan that can make us the best in the conference and really help us elevate. If we deliver on that plan, in the next 3 years, we'll be at a position where we're handing out a substantial amount more of scholarship money and really being able to get into the financial support side of things that ultimately makes you better. At the end of the day, that's the most important asset is what you can offer in scholarship dollars, Olsen Award, revenue sharing. That's going to help you get that next level recruit, whether that's high school or transfer portal. And so we've got a plan that we've kind of mapped out. It kind of goes hand in hand with, okay, what's enrollment doing at UNF? Because we're projected to go to 25,000 students by 2028. That's tremendous growth. That's a huge part of this plan because 60% of our revenue is student fee dependent. And then also, what kind of funding are we getting? Not from a state perspective as much as philanthropic support. What other, are people buying tickets? Are they doing corporate sponsorships? So it's a combination of pools of revenue to get where we need to be, but we're trending in the right direction. I think we've got a solid plan, and so I'm still bullish on it. I've been here for 14 years now at UNF, 4 as AD. That's a long time in college athletics to be in one spot, but I'm just excited every day to get up and go after that plan because I just know what UNF can be, not just in this region, but nationally. And I want to be, this being my hometown too. Like I want to help us get there.
Yeah, well, you've done a good job. I know just in our conversations, it's not like you guys were blindsided by this. You guys have had plans in place and everything else. The way to juice all that up is basketball. A huge change with Coach Driscoll out going to Kansas State, Bobby Kennan in. I guess just some quick thoughts. And were you able, I think you're still in a window where guys can leave. How's the retention there for this basketball team that had a pretty nice recruiting class coming in, which has had pretty nice recruiting classes for a long time, and then develop these guys. But obviously that would help Bobby in this interim year.
Yeah. So Bobby Kennan, that was his first test. I said, all right, Bobby, this is your show now. Let's see what you can do with it. Can you retain our entire roster where nobody goes into the transfer portal? And he's done it. So he's passed the first test with flying colors. Like he said, the 30 days aren't quite up, but we already have a handful of student athletes on campus now training. And the rest of them come in a little over a week. And then we're doing our full 6 weeks of training with the entire team. And so feel good that we're going to have that entire roster intact. And that was one of the first challenges he had. We're working on the coaching staff and backfilling a couple positions, but you'll have some recognizable names on our staff, which is going to be exciting. And I think our fans are going to be really excited about as well, that are going to come back and support Coach Kennan, and we'll be off and running. I'm really excited to see what he can do because everybody knows Bobby Kennan is the assistant coach. Tremendous guy, been there all 16 years, will run a same program from in terms of character, integrity. But who is Bobby Kennan as a head coach? And that's really what we've got to figure out, and we don't have a long runway to figure that out, but he's ready for it. He's been ready for this opportunity, and so I'm excited to see what he can do.
Marcel, you write your alumni check for $36.42 to the new rev share model, or what?
You moved the decimal place to the wrong spot. Come on, now I'm $3,600 over here. Come on now.
Hey, Nick, you're really good at this stuff. Appreciate you layman's terming this. It's complicated, but it's fascinating, and this reaches everybody. It reaches you guys who have current positions, all the Osprey folks that have supported the program. Proud to, you saw a lot of these guys come out of the woodwork, or folks come out of the woodwork with a softball run that you probably didn't even know were still cheering on the Ospreys. And then moms and dads and everybody across the sports landscape, even us in the media. So I know it's complicated, but appreciate the time.